this song. It was for like children in need, like 2 or 3 years ago.
I remember that. Yeah.
Maybe Coldplay will be sitting behind her actually playing. Well,
no, they're too busy
actually
having lives and having jobs because they're on tour at the moment. Hugely, massively successful tour. They're in Glasgow and Edinburgh, I think, this week, or one of the two. So they'll be too busy to do anything with that. They were busy last year, weren't they?
That's what I mean. Apparently, it's not going to be Coldplay. We're going to have to listen to if this is true.
The chat. Their imaginations are positively bubbling over with the possibilities of that. Archer Collins says it could be an acronym for "Don't Run Yet." Could be.
But Dan, do you know what because like I said, I got sent this rumour and I just burst out laughing. Another part of this rumour is it's called Dry because Dr. D-R-Y Yaz. So he's doing like a shipping thing.
Oh, just stop it now. Stop it.
This show is turning into Crackerjack.
That is absolutely awful. Now, I don't know if you guys... Well, yeah, Robert Payne says Dry describes Chris Chibnall's writer's block. So we've got lots of comments like that. Sums up the current era as Julian Raxel. A lot of dry humour in it, speculates Duncan Shaw. And Paul Murray, he diagnoses that it should simply be called Damp Squib. Shah from Geek Rambles is here. Hiya, Shah says, I'm late, but I've just caught up. How many double entendres have there been so far? I think we're into double figures. But somebody out there is keeping count. Count your fingers and your toes and anything else that pops up. Madam, Actress Ware. Good to see you, Shah. Actress Ware says garbage.
Hi, garbage.
And the Darren Zone is here. Says Dry. Why? Well, looks like... Charlotte knows why. We'll just have to place our faith.
That's part of the rumor, and I was just like, but here's the thing: I don't think that's the title, but I can buy Chris Chibnall being like trash, like stupid enough to think I'm going to put a Coldplay song while she's regenerating. I can just see that.
Would they be able to afford it though? Could they have paid the bill?
Well, it would come with a hefty tag to use a track that big in the soundtrack to the show and license it to be screened all over the world. Tony L says, Dry, that's a terrible title, but there's a rumour that 13 drowns and regenerates, so it could be connected to that.
Who's holding their head under the water?
The British public viewing public. That's who's done that.
I'm going to poo-poo this one. Quite viciously, in fact. I don't know if anybody remembers this, and I wouldn't forgive if you weren't paying attention. But last year, when they ran a series of Doctor Who called Flux, and it was over 6 weeks, you may have blocked it out of your memory, and I could understand why. But at the time, there was speculation that the season finale of Flux was going to be titled My Universe, and this was because at that time, Coldplay had released a new album. And the sort of standout single release from it was called My Universe. Great track, to be fair. And it was, again, based on the conceit that Jodie Whittaker is a big Coldplay fan, and they were going to have that playing over it and blah, blah, blah. Exactly the same story, just put on remix. So file that one under B for bollocks, everybody. It's absolute stone cold bollocks. No question about that. And we'll keep dishing out the truths on more nonsensical rumours later on in the show. Now, if you'd like some more of this, there's more of it than you could possibly cope with, and your ears can stand if you head over to type40.podbean.com. That's our designated home feed, full of not just the audio versions of these shows, which you can play and play again to your heart's content and relive every double entendre, but the podcast itself, Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, well over 100 episodes of that now, and lots more recorded to take us right the way through to the anniversary year. Don't miss out on any of that. Why do we do it, everybody? Why do we do it? It's all for the love of Who. The love of Doctor Who, of course. It's just like that fella, like a kid in a sweet shop.
I like where the gun's pointing.
Hey, do you know what I saw the other day? As I was going into B&M on the beginning of the hunt for the new action figures, guess what I saw, Spacebookers, in B&M? I saw Jammy Dodgers with blue jam in it.
What?
Now, is that acceptable? Pop us a postcard, let us know.
No.
Let us know. Instagram and Twitter at Type 40 Doctor Who.
Blue green Jammy Dodgers, Simon.
Jammy Dodgers. Does that signify that the world is in fact coming to an end? Let us know Your
We are in
thoughts
a
on that
parallel
one?
universe. Check out
We-
the Type 4 Facebook page.
We could well be. Yeah, hit us up with all your favourite Doctor Who snack treats as well. What are you going to be getting in? Not just for the centenary special, but for the winter season generally. What do you favour? Is it the
You're
jelly
assuming that they
babies?
might be watching it. They have an off
Or is it
switch.
the jammy Dodgers? Yeah, yeah. I think
Really not.
certain members of the community are going to be watching it for very, very different reasons, aren't they? So yeah, we're going to have to do a straw poll about who's watching it and who
Exactly.
isn't. I have to say the
The blue
Coldplay
hair
suggestion.
people can have a blue jammy Dodger.
They could do. Maybe that's what it's about. Yeah, it could be. We'll have Grub. He's got peckish. Will, as all this talk of Grub, he's off to raid the larder there. Do people still have orders? Blue jam. I think that could have put him off. Yes, the blue. Oh, we've got an answer. We've got an answer from Problem Being. He says that the blue jammy Dodger
It was actually
blueberry.
Problem Being. It was blueberry. Yes, B&M.
Answering the
B&M
difficult
want to send us
questions.
some to test them. Please do. We are grateful.
Answering the difficult questions here on Type 40 Live as always. Yes, let us know what you think of all of that and any other snack surprises. Talking about, I always get nostalgic though when I think about jammy Dodgers. It's like wagon wheels, isn't it, Simon? They take me back to my childhood. I mean, jammy Dodgers. Wagon wheels used to be bigger for a start. I don't care what they say. But jammy Dodgers,
They're like little now.
easily.
It used to be
Easily.
on wagons.
Yes.
Definitely, that's
There's a reason why they were called wagon wheels.
categorically true. And I think jammy Dodgers were a bit thicker and there was a lot more jam in them and maybe a lot more additives and things like that. But there were other things back in the day that were a lot more good for us, weren't they? That were a lot healthier and we got just as much nourishment out of in days of Doctor Who gone by. And luckily we have the Doctor Who diary at hand to remind us of those things here on Type 40 Live.
It's a bit
So,
early for Simon.
Yes. From this
It is.
It's keeping him awake. That's what it is,
So-
because he's getting on.
Over to Simon Horton in the cozy corner for the Doctor Who diary.
Oh, we don't normally do this till after my bedtime. Well, I just don't know what to do. Right.
You can thank me later, buddy. You can thank me later.
We are indeed spinning back through the decades. And 8 years ago this week, you might have been stepping down to Deep Breath, Peter Capaldi's premiere episode, or a little bit earlier than that, 54 years ago, you might have been stepping down to The Dominators Part 3, 58 years ago, The Reign of Terror Part 3, but we're not talking about any of those this week, because we're going actually back 31 years ago to 1991. And there was an episode that was screened tomorrow, 31 years ago, in 1991, that had never been screened before. Anybody want to hazard a guess what that episode might have been?
What year was that?
1991.
Even I know.
Go for it, Matt.
Was it the pilot?
It was 10 points for Matt Potts. It was the pilot
Hey!
episode that was screened on 1991 tomorrow. 28 years later than it was actually being produced. So it just took them 28 years to get round to this. It was screened on BBC Two as part of the Lime Grove story, which was an evening of programme marked the closing of the Lime Grove studios because, of course, the pilot episode, An Unearthly Child, had been produced recorded in Lime Grove Studio D. And so this was the very first time we actually got to see the pilot episode. For anybody that hasn't seen it, you really actually do need to go and have a look at it. It's very, very easily available now on various DVDs and so on and so forth. I have to be honest, there's an enormous amount of pleasure when I watch it in the amount of fluffs and technical errors that are in there.
Yeah.
I love the fact that the TARDIS doors just swing open with the most enormous bang.
And both at different speeds too, Simon.
Say again, sorry?
Both at different speeds too. Each
Both
door's
different speeds. Oh, they really still show the doors. But my very, very favourite fluff in it is when Ian and Barbara try to get into the classroom early on in the episode, and they spend about half a minute just looking down, trying to manhandle for no apparently good reason this door to get it to open. It's fabulous. You've got to watch it. Sidney Newman, of course, the man who had created Doctor Who and had certainly commissioned the pilot episode, described it as the worst piece of work I've seen in a long time. So it really wasn't very popular at the time. And you've got Susan acting even more weird than
I
normal.
like her performance in this one. I do.
But it really is a
It's
cracking episode.
otherworldly.
The highlight of the episode for me actually is the fact that you get to see the TARDIS interior visible through the doors of the TARDIS before Barbara goes.
Oh yeah,
TARDIS interior. Only time in the classic series that you ever see that, and of course you don't see it because they didn't screen it until 1991. They never recreated that. It's not in the transmitted episode of An Unearthly Child, so it's unique. To the,
do you think that was because it wasn't they didn't intend on remounting it as many times as they did they? Do you think that was a deliberate thing, or do you think it's because space was at a premium? Because they were filming this in Lime Grove, of course, weren't they? The BBC's Lime Grove facility.
Yeah, it's difficult to say. What I mean, it was obvious. I would say it's obvious watching it that they fully intended you to see the TARDIS through the doors. Why they abandoned it for the remount, who knows? It's lost to the mists of time. We know that Human obviously demanded it be remade with various differences, and the differences aren't necessarily automatically apparent until you actually sort of watch it. If you watch one after the other, you'll immediately
you see a lot of differences. You can see, like you said, there's lots of bits that got cut out. The Doctor's quite a different figure almost in the on-aired pilot, and like you said, Susan's just, you don't know what's going on with Susan at all. So there's lots of differences if you watch them back to back.
I believe there's a video on YouTube as well, but where somebody puts the two side by side, or that may even be on the box set. Come to think of it, but I think I've seen it on YouTube where somebody's put it visually side by side. It is fascinating to see in real time all those differences. Yeah.
And one thing that always mystified me was, I think it's on the DVD box set at the beginning.
That's right.
When they do an edited version of the pilot episode, but they actually correct some of the mistakes, which just seems utterly ridiculous to me. That's one of the things that I would really hold them up and say, why did you do that? I think they correct Susan getting the chart position of John Smith and the common men the wrong way round. I'm like, well, I don't understand why you'd correct that. The point of the pilot episode is you see it warts and all. You see it with its mistakes in it, and that's part of its charm. That's its beauty.
I think that Shah sums this up here in the chat, says it's so beautiful and authentic, and I just love it. It's imperfectly perfect. That's spot on, isn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And it's also, there's just so much care and attention thrown into it. And you can't help thinking that had they not done the pilot episode and made those mistakes in the pilot episode, you just wonder, maybe Doctor Who would never have taken off.
Absolutely.
Because the mistakes would have then been gone on to the transmitted version. And you just don't know whether it wouldn't have
I'm a total believer in that, because I think the Doctor was too alienating, and I don't think the audience would have responded to Susan. And Susan was supposed to be there on behalf of the audience as well, in a sense. So I think it would have been a massive flop had they gone with the pilot. Yeah. But it's great. It's like watching a rehearsal.
Yeah,
when they screened this in '91, Simon, I've been reading Doctor Who magazine for years, and I'd been a lunatic. I'd been and immersed myself in Doctor Who fandom with yourself and many other friends. And yet I still wasn't really sure what the pilot episode was, and when they screened it, I wasn't sure what I was looking at or why, because there was so little information out. Even in '91, wasn't the JT? Remember, there was so few reference books even then. There was Jeremy Bentham's early years book and a couple of others, but there were scant paragraphs that you'd pick up in these titles that would tell you very, very little. And Lime Grove, when they had that, it was an entire day, wasn't it, that was dedicated to the closure of Lime Grove Studio. So they didn't just show this; they showed numerous other gems from the archive. And I think I videoed it. I set the video, recorded as much of it as I could on long play, and I think I probably only watched half of it. But Lime Grove itself was a fascinating place, wasn't it?
Absolutely fascinating place, and so much of television history is there, and of course so much of Doctor Who history is there.
So tiny, isn't it? It's like a squash court.
It was minuscule, Matt. I mean, this was the whole point. This was the argument that Verity Lambert had. She just kept on arguing that they should not be making Doctor Who in Lime Grove, or indeed then in Riverside Studios that they then went on to. There wasn't much different, to be honest. She wanted it to be made at Television Centre. So yeah, when you look at it and you wonder, and there are so many stories out there from people like Carol Ann Ford who say it was just sort of stifling. You know, the heat in there was just absolutely unbearable. So they really made it under very, very grueling, difficult conditions. And again, it's a credit to them. They did it with very antiquated equipment as well.
It's a fascinating story. Will Hadcroft adds here, Simon, Sidney Newman didn't like the original entry into the TARDIS, according to the Origins documentary. We'll have to tempt, because Richard Molesworth, who's a friend of the show, has been on several times. We could tempt him on maybe next year for the anniversary, ask him a few things about this and about Origins, because that is probably, it's certainly one of the seminal Doctor Who documentaries available on DVD or anywhere else. So maybe we'll put some of these questions to him and see if we can find out some things that he found out that he's never told, or things that are lesser known. We'll have to see what we can see, won't we? But Lime Grove, yeah, there's a certain romance about that era of broadcasting. And as much as I'd love to have gone on a tour around the Concrete Donut, around Television Centre. But now, after all this time, I think I'd like to go to Lime Grove even more.
It would be fascinating to go and have a look. And as I say, I just love to see that the equipment that they were working with, you know, by all accounts, they were almost wind-up cameras, you know, they were much better than that. So, yeah, I'd love to, it would be love to go back and just see them. Wouldn't you love to just have some fly-on-the-wall documentary footage from them filming that original pilot episode? Can you imagine? Just as a bit of a tempter, actually, for next year, I've been communicating with Tony Farrell today. Hello, Tony, out there, and we've been we've been talking about some of the stuff that is going to come into the diary for next year, for the 60th anniversary year, all around about those early years. So I'm not going to tell you any more than that, but it's some fascinating stuff we're going to be dropping into the diary for next year. So stay tuned for that.
There's a teaser for you, everybody. Type 40 Live here on the Facebook channel. Please like. Subscribe to the channel and hit the close to bell so you don't miss any of the good stuff for the 60th anniversary year. What else is in the diary then, Simon?
Okay, moving on. We've got a couple of birthdays. And the first one is Annette Badland.
I love Annette Badland.
2 tomorrow. Annette Badland is 72 tomorrow. Of course, she played Margaret Blaine, also known as Blonfell Fochpass Mia de Slovene. It just trips off the tongue. And I've been rehearsing all day. And I hope I get it right.
Well done, sir.
So yeah, Annette Badland says she's 72 tomorrow. Listen, folks. Dan, guess where she was born in 1950?
Ooh, hospital? No, see what I mean. Solihull. I'm going to say Solihull.
You're very, very close. You're very close. Edgbaston. She was born.
Really?
Yeah, Annette Badland was born just down the road from Dan and me in Edgbaston, where they do the cricket. Her first screen work was in The Naked Civil Servant in 19.
With John Hurt.
Yeah. She was just a minor bit part player, but yeah, she was in The Naked Civil Servant. And then Jabberwocky, I think it's a Monty Python film, isn't it? Jabberwocky.
Terry Jones directed Jabberwocky, I think.
Right, from 1977. And then her first TV, she's honestly, I say this every week, that their list of credits is on my arm, but goodness me, Annette Badland, please don't bark, Lenny, that's the dog, I do apologise. Annette Badland's list of credits are literally off the page. I looked on IMDb and I have never seen a list of credits as long as Annette Badland's. She's been in everything. EastEnders, Bergerac, Coronation Street, The Demon Headmaster, Jackanory. We talked about Jackanory last week. Yes,
Dick Emery. She was on Dick Emery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
She was recently in the film Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think she plays Augustus Gloop's mother, does she?
Yes, she does. Now you reminded me.
And also she played, nobody will be surprised to discover that she played Madame Arcati in a stage production of Blithe Spirit. Of course she did, because that's just kind of perfect casting for Annette Badland. She's one of those actresses, isn't she? Let's be honest. I mean, she's a heavyweight.
She's a class act. Even when she's in roles that aren't necessarily classy, like a character in EastEnders, she's always a class actor. I could watch her in anything.
Well, again, she's one of those actors of the old school variety. She's actually an actor with a talent. I mean, when you look at the movie of Little Voice, you won't recognise her. But go and check it out.
I haven't seen her in Little Voice. That's the one with what's her name in?
Jane
Jane Horrocks.
Jane Horrocks.
Jane Horrocks plays Little Voice herself. Yeah. Yeah.
And she lives down the Danos Road, so he says in the live chat on YouTube. And the affection. Probably ask her to come on Type 40 Live. Yeah. Happy birthday, Annette, says Richard Brooks. And there's lots more greetings like that there. Shah says that Simon said Margaret's name, Slovene name. Simon said Margaret's name in Slovene so beautifully. My respect for him has gone even higher. There you go.
Shall I do it again? No, I daren't do it again because I won't manage to get it right second time. I won't manage to get it right second time. Can you talk amongst yourselves for 2 seconds while I let the dog out?
Yeah, we're now turning into Blue Peter from Crackerjack. We're going into Blue Peter now.
Yes.
Yeah. In all seriousness, though, I mean, when this character of Margaret Slovene, it's a perfect example of the kind of villain that Russell T Davies creates, isn't it? From the outside looking in, JT, it's pure cartoon, isn't it? And yet over those 3 episodes, he gets in her head, under her skin, and literally sort of reinvents who that character is as a person and closes her story with an upbeat sort of message, doesn't she? I can't imagine another writer doing that.
I think that was possibly a case of, because we know that Aliens of London and World War III was filmed first in 2004 on the reboot Who. And I think Russell probably went, I've got Annette Badland here.
Yeah, let's use her.
Give her something to do, not just snarl at people for 3 episodes.
Yeah, because she would have been wasted if she just appeared in those 2 episodes. As brilliant as she is and as brilliant as she was, it was lovely to have her back in for that 1 episode where she's the main feature. Fantastic.
I agree, JT. I think she's better in Boomtown than she's in Aliens of London.
Oh, she's way better. Like you can, like JT said, she's the centerpiece. You really, and that scene with her in the restaurant with the doctor. That scene is like when people talk about series 1, they usually talk about that scene because it's just electric between the 2 actors.
It's an episode that's grown on me over the years, definitely. How was that for vamping, everybody? Did we get by all right? How's Lenny now, Simon?
He's absolutely fine. He's been out. There he is. Say hello, Lenny.
Hiya, Lenny. Okay.
So yeah, he's been out. Sorry, when you got to go, folks.
Yeah.
From a dog to a wolf. From a dog to a wolf, Simon. What else have we got?
Oh, I like the way you did that, Dan. That was very deftly done indeed. Because today, Jessica Martin hits. Well, are we allowed to say how old she is? She's bless her. Jessica Martin is 60 today. Now, listen,
really?
To give her full name, you're going to like this. Jessica Cecilia Anna Marie Martin. There we go. That's Jessica Martin's full name. And of course, for those who don't know, she played Mags in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. But of course, she also played a very, very minor voiceover role. Here's your second pop quiz for the day. Can anybody remember what the minor voiceover role is that she plays in Doctor Who? Go on,
a Queen in Voyage of the Dam, wasn't it?
Oh, you all know it.
I can only remember because we did it on the Jubilee show a few weeks ago. But
we did.
It's still a great fact. You're
quite right. Listen, get this. Guess where Jessica Martin was born?
Edgbaston?
No, Fulham. Sorry, couldn't resist it. Yeah, she was born in Fulham. And what I love about Jessica Martin, she got her big break as an impressionist when Rory Bremner met her at the Edinburgh Festival and invited her to join his review group. Get that? So we've got Rory Bremner to thank for Jessica Martin hitting the big time. And of course, she did loads of work on Spitting Image. She's done loads and loads of voiceovers. So she's done a lot of impressionistic work, a lot of voiceover work. But of course, in recent years, she's broken into doing comic books, and this all comes back to 2011 when she was touring in the musical Spamalot with Phil Jupitus, and she showed him some of her sketches that she'd done, and Phil Jupitus was blown away by them and said that she should do a graphic novel. And she says this was her light bulb moment because sure enough, that's exactly what she did. The first one was Elsie Harris Picture Palace, which was set in the 1930s British film industry, and that was her first full-length graphic novel. And one of her most recent one, I think actually her most recent one is from 2019, which is a graphic novel of her very life story. It's called Life Drawing, A Life Under Lights, and it's her autobiography. So she's really more than a lot of people, a lot of actors out there, she's managed to create an entire second career for herself.
Well, when I went to a comic book convention, I was touting for business myself. When I went to a comic book convention a few years ago, she was there, and it was very early on. I think she just got her first book out, and yes, she is just a really nice sequential storyteller. I've seen some of her work, and it's got a unique charm to it. It's very much from a bygone era, and the lines are just. I can imagine that she's probably got a children's book or two in her as well. I'm really, really excited when I see people, wherever they're from, whatever they're doing, any creative endeavor where they can take something, a talent they may have had all their lives, and find a way to showcase it, to explore that side to them as well. I think it's an inspirational story, that everything that Jessica's managed to achieve throughout her career, but in the last few years, in particular for sorry, Jessica, if you're watching, but for people who are a little older, in middle age, who think they'll never get a chance to do X, Y, and Z, here is somebody proving that it can be done. I think it's a lovely story. Happy birthday, Jessica Martin.
Yeah, and of course, let's not forget what a brilliant job she does in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. We haven't even talked about that, but she's a knockout as a werewolf.
Oh, she's wonderful. Yes, a great character. You know exactly. Ace was in that too, and Ace obviously was a well-drawn character, but yeah, so memorable for somebody who was only in those 4 episodes. And the things that she had to do, the leaping around, the makeup, there was a lot going on in there, and she went at it with great gusto. And as you said, Simon, that this woman was, back in the 80s, she was a known, I don't use the word celebrity, I don't, that would be fair, but she had this huge career and a niche, and things were going very, very well for her. And so to play a werewolf on Doctor Who, it's it seemed like a step out of the comfort zone. But again, fair play.
She was very much. I don't know whether you guys can remember, but I remember that there was a great deal of excitement around her casting. I remember being talked about that this woman was cast because of the fact she had just such a well-known career from doing spitting image voiceovers and the like. And again, this is where we have to sort of salute JNT. Okay, he took some controversial casting decisions, particularly with guest stars, but very often he got it right. And one could see Jessica Martin, a voiceover artist from Spitting Image, as a controversial casting decision. But it's brilliant. You have to hand it to them that they did it in the 80s. It worked. That
whole question of is it stunt casting, that kept recurring, didn't it, in the 80s, JT? But I always felt it was quite unfair then, and it seems really hollow now.
I never thought Beryl Reid was stunt casting, but
that was totally
yeah. But when I was a kid, I didn't go, he's put that in there because that old lady's famous,
No, that was a different kettle of fish. Jessica Martin wasn't. Jessica Martin, if I recall rightly, John liked her. He met her. He liked her, and John, of course, because that was his background, he could see talent. Yeah, and he wanted to bring out other strengths of people. So if you were a comedian, he would say, "Do you want to do some drama?" And that was one of his strengths, and good for him, because he kickstarted a lot of people's second career, as what they were supposed to do, which is what they wanted to do, was straight acting, and he launched that for a lot of people.
JT, had Ken Dodd, had he done Shakespeare before or after Delta and the Bannermen?
Before.
Okay.
He'd done that before, and John was aware of that. And also Ken Dodd was a massive draw. He had a huge... Okay, it didn't translate back then, but since then, I've known people go out trying to look for the DVDs and the Blu-rays for the Doddy episode, so... But yeah, it's all in context.
Context is everything, as we want to say here at Type 40 Live. A nice selection of birthdays and other treats there in the diary, as always. Thank you so much for putting that together, Simon.
You're more than welcome. And just as a very final word, I've got to comment on this. We're not talking about it at all, but I can't not mention the fact that Doctor Who and the Daleks, the film, premiered this week in 1965. Gosh, we love that film. We've spoken about it lots, so we're not doing it now, but I couldn't not mention it. Happy birthday to everybody out there.
Check out our review of Doctor Who and the Daleks special feature, which featured the late Ian McLaughlin there. That's on the channel, or up at type40.podbean.com for that. There's more Dalek movie coverage to come here on Type 40 and Type 40 Live over the next couple of months. Don't miss that. In the meantime, what have they got to do, Simon? That's running along the bottom of the screen. You tell them. Go on, tell them.
They've got to hit the like button. They've got to subscribe. Come on, folks.
Good man.
Get your act together.
That's the spirit, everybody. Thanks again, Simon. Always love a bit of the Doctor Who diary. I love it. They love it. You love it. Everybody loves it. Hey.